Valheim is a game that took the industry by storm when it released. People praised it for molding elements like Souls-like combat, Minecraft building, and the progression style of games like Elden Ring or Terraria. But how does it hold up 4 years later, and should you be playing it in 2025? Well, that's what I hope to find out in this video. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so before I get into gameplay elements, I figured I should mention the team that made Valheim. You see, this game was made by roughly 15 developers. Now, I say 15 developers, but the main portion of this game was put together by just one person. Yeah, shout out to Richard Svensson, who cranked the game out over the course of years. This is honestly pretty refreshing in a world where publishers think that any game under $300 million can't be successful. But now let's talk about the game's future. You see, Valheim is still technically in early access. It doesn't feel incomplete or have any of those early access hallmarks, but it is still technically in development. The devs are still working to provide the perfect vision for what they want for the game, and they've actually made some serious changes since 2021. This includes new biomes like the Ash and Mistlands. I'm not going to spoil these in this video, but the developers also plan on making a Deep North update to mark the full release of the game itself. So now is a really good time to jump into the game because you can experience this content as it comes out. The developers also had the courtesy of pricing this game at just $20. It also regularly goes down to $10 during Steam sales. So shout out to Richard Svensson and the team for putting together an amazing game without falling into monetization traps. Alright, so now I'm going to be talking about the progression in Valheim. Now, Valheim's progression is actually pretty standard for a sandbox game. You go from biome to biome, slaying bosses and gathering resources, from the peaceful meadows to the creepy black forest and so on. But I love how Valheim gives you the freedom to go wherever you want. Now, you can take out all the bosses in a quick succession, speedrunning the biomes, but you also have the ability to spend hours building your house, sorting chests, or doing other seemingly mundane tasks. And that brings me to my next point, that Valheim makes tasks that are seemingly boring actually pretty fun. The prime example of this I can think of is chopping wood. Now, if this were a standard survival game, you would simply hack away at all the individual blocks until they're all gone. But Valheim makes it fun because after you chop the base, the whole tree falls and you're at risk of getting hit by it. It's always a funny yet humiliating experience when you or one of your friends dies to a falling tree. It's kind of like a physics-based minigame. Speaking of that, death is an important aspect and setback in all games, but meeting your end in Valheim is especially brutal. You lose all your stuff and get sent back to your spawn point or bed, similar to Minecraft. But you also have your food and status effects revoked, which are key to health and stamina in Valheim. That, combined with the tumultuous size of the world, makes death quite a tribulation. The monsters of Valheim also scale significantly with the player, so dying and coming back with no armor and minimal health is quite a challenge, especially in the late game. Now, this could be avoided by making portals or getting good, but this game's punishment for death is definitely higher than average. But at the same time, this does make a good risk to reward cycle. This is because the farther you explore, the higher the likelihood of an ocean separating you from your belongings. This makes exploration truly feel like a threat and make you feel like you're truly a Viking exploring a new world. Now, speaking of the world, the open world in Valheim is procedurally generated, but its humongous size is impressive without compromising on quality. You mainly traverse the world on foot or by boat. When walking, you have to manage your stamina in order to keep moving, and on a ship, you have to watch wind direction and your ship's durability. As you get better oars, you can make better ships which go faster, which is necessary because of the huge size of the world. The open world plays a key role in the gameplay loop of going to a new biome, getting stuff, and getting back or dying in order to level up your character. This makes the game feel fresh because the farther out you go, the more frustrating your death will be. Overall, I really like this gameplay style because it truly makes you feel like a Viking exploring new lands. Now, ordinarily, this would get monotonous over time, but the variety of the world makes it consistently entertaining. From trolls to underground dungeons to bosses, this game is always brimming with new content for you to explore even dozens of hours into your experience. Now, I briefly mentioned bosses, so let's talk about the combat in Valheim. It's actually pretty good. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't have too many unique animations or moves, but it works well enough with a Souls-like approach and an admirable parrying system. The weapon variety also really saves it. You can have Akers, polearms, swords, hammers, and even mage weapons later in the game. The shield parry is also very fun to pull off once you manage to do it. So overall, the combat mainly consists of blocking, stance breaking, and hitting enemies. But it doesn't serve as a low point in the game and doesn't bring it down. So overall, the combat is good, but not the main selling point of the game. So I've talked about combat itself, but what about the enemies? Well, there's actually a significant amount of variety in the foes you fight in Valheim. Each biome has its own slew of unique enemies, and there is a boss for each biome. The enemies are mainly based around basic fantasy and mythology, but they are well designed and fun to fight. But don't don't let the Minecrafty art style fool you, because some of these creatures can seriously destroy you, although a lot can be easily beaten with a well-timed parry, but enemies like trolls, wolves, and death mosquitoes will seriously make you rethink life. The troll is probably the most iconic enemy in Valheim and presents a frustrating challenge in the early game, but each enemy has its weaknesses and trolls can be easily taken out with a bow. On the other hand, wolves and death mosquitoes are late game enemies and pose a much bigger threat when trying to retrieve items. But overall, when it comes to enemies in Valheim, it's all about preparation. If you do have the weapon with the correct damage type, you can make quick work of pretty much any enemy in the entire game. And this also goes for bosses. Speaking of that, let's talk about the bosses in Valheim. Well, they're all pretty decent. Eikthyr, the forest boss, basically serves as a tutorial for the game, and the other bosses aren't too hard with preparation, with the swamp one being the hardest. Especially if you cater to their weaknesses, they can all be defeated relatively easily. That being said, if you choose to underprepare for boss fights, they can be pretty damn hard. So Valheim is definitely no Elden Ring, but I appreciate that when it comes to bosses, it lets you make them as hard or as easy as you want. So I've always loved building in games. In fact, that's the main reason I ranked Minecraft so high in my top 10 games ever video, which you should totally go watch, by the way. But advertising aside, I've always loved to build structures in survival games. And Valheim handles this mechanic extremely well in my opinion. It gives you a really good amount of freedom and makes you contend with some physics-based elements. And it lets you start pretty fast. Once you spawn in, you can be building within the first few minutes of your playthrough. The game is pretty generous with resources and doesn't punish you for starting over. Valheim really offers some executive creative freedom that not many games do. I also enjoy that you can build for however long you want and it doesn't affect progression. I'll be brief because I mentioned this in the progression segment, but I enjoy the escapism in just building your house instead of going on expeditions constantly, and Valheim appeals to this playstyle just as well. So overall, Valheim's building system is one of my favorites in any game, and it won't disappoint new players, quite the opposite in fact. Now I'm going to briefly touch on something most games get wrong, but Valheim does right, and that is weapon durability. Hell, even some of my favorite games like Minecraft and Breath of the Wild get this mechanic wrong in my opinion, because in those games when items break, they're gone forever. I mean, Minecraft at least lets you repair the items, but it's overall just more worth it to make a new one most of the time. But Valheim makes it easy by letting you repair materials at workbenches for no extra cost to the player. Your tools also never permanently break, so you don't have to be conservative with your durability. This makes durability more of a consequence of exploration more than an actual annoyance. But it honestly shocks me that this small team handles this mechanic better than practically anyone in the industry as a whole. So I've been praising this game for a good amount of time now, and I think it overall deserves it. But what are some grievances I have with the game that may irk new players? Well, there aren't too many, but one of them would be the sea serpent. This may be a minor spoiler, but I figured I should warn you about him sooner rather than later. He's not bad if you learn how to avoid him, but he can be very frustrating for new players that don't know when he spawns, especially because of how expensive boats are early in the game. I don't think he's a necessarily bad enemy, but I think they should communicate to the game how he spawns only during nighttime so players know how to avoid him. So my recommendation would just be to not sail at night. This may seem simplistic, but it'll save you stuff that you might have lost to him. He will easily destroy the earlier boats, so it's best to avoid him at all costs. The only other real complaint I have with the game is that I think there's a lack of caves. Other games like Minecraft and Terraria make use of the underground world, but Valheim doesn't. Now sure, there are structures like burial chambers, but I wish you could stumble upon huge caves naturally. Hell, maybe there could even be a boss down there. But this is more of a suggestion than a complaint, so hopefully the Valheim team will consider adding caves to the game later on. But when it comes to gripes I have with the game, that's about it. But these are the ones that stood out to me. But if you have any complaints with the game, let me know in the comments below because I'd love to hear your opinion. So it's conclusion time, and if you couldn't tell already, I definitely recommend Valheim in 2025. If you enjoy medieval building or survival games to any capacity, I think you're gonna have a great time with this. But I would recommend using a few guides, and don't be ashamed to look at the wiki. If you're looking for a guide specifically, I'd recommend Is Pre-Built or Spazzy Games because their videos are pretty welcoming to newcomers. Now this kind of goes without saying, but if you have friends that you think will be into this game, get them on it. It'll be a lot more fun if you have friends along your journey. I went solo, but I imagine playing with friends will be a lot more fun overall. But that's about it for me. I put a lot of effort into this video, so if you could like and subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated. And if you enjoyed this video, check out this one where I reviewed Just Cause 3. But I'm out for now. Bye guys!